All right, so the first thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing and divide up the other two clumps. This is still just covered with bumblebees. I want to move some plants that I really don't like very much. They look awful. It's just starting to sprinkle here. Hi, I'm Sue from Garden Moxie. Welcome to my garden. I garden here in Southeast Michigan. My garden is in Zone 6A. We are at the end of the garden season. I found some gaps in the garden as I looked through photographs from the garden season that I took. And here in my pollinator garden, what I want to do is I want to divide some of the perennials that I already have so that I can use them and make the garden more beautiful for next season. So let me share a few views of what the garden actually looks like now at the end of September here. So this is definitely the end of the garden season. And this is a great time to see what kind of gaps you have in the garden, where you want to plant some bulbs, and if there's plants that we can divide up and make some more beautiful garden space next season. I am going to say that in terms of the pollinator garden, this white blooming Nepeta was an absolute star for this season. I mean, you can see here, it's cool. And it's been raining a little bit here. It's going to rain later. This is still just covered with bumblebees and bees as they just try to get the rest of these flowers. And I love how the texture is for these flowers. And this is a wonderful plant. So I definitely want to make sure that I'm not going to do anything to interfere with this beautiful clump of Nepeta here in the pollinator garden. So one of the things that I definitely want to do is I do want to start cleaning up these zinnias. They are starting to, they're very closely planted together here. They're starting to get covered with some powdery mildew. They're really not looking that great. So I'm going to keep a few of the plants here because these will bloom right up until, right up until the frost. Yeah, so again, I've got seedlings here for the forget-me-nots that seeded themselves during this season. I want to be careful of those plants. If I dig any of them up, I want to plant them back, like this seedling here. I'll definitely want to get that back into the garden. They make a nice carpet for the bulbs. So we're just gonna, like I said, we're just going to kind of save these forget-me-not seedlings, make sure I get all the soil off here, and kind of clean this zinnia bed up. All right, so the first thing I want to do is I just want to make some space here for the Millennium alliums. And I'm just going to dig up these marigolds that have been eaten by the groundhog. We'll just get those put away here and clean up a little space. And this is going to be this will make the perfect drift of Millennium alliums. And it'll go, again, different bloom times from the yarrow Coronation Gold, and on the other side of the yarrow I've got this beautiful white blooming Gara. So this area here should stay blooming through pretty much the summer and in the spring season next season. So this is the perfect time to get these Millennium alliums in here. The other thing is Millennium allium foliage is perfect for hiding the dying foliage of daffodils. So I'll be putting in a clump of daffodils here as well that'll look beautiful in the spring, and I won't have to worry about the foliage dying back and looking unsightly because the alliums will cover that up. Now the one thing I do see is I see a seedling, a rose campion seedling. And so I want to dig this plant up here and move this to a better spot. And I also want to move this plant because it really is not a plant I want there anymore. I'm going to be dividing this clump of alliums up. These are really need to be divided up. They're the oldest ones I have here in the pollinator garden. And so all I'm going to do is really just dig this clump up, split it in half, and replant it, take the other half and move it over there. It's very straightforward, and these are very hardy plants. They're easy to divide, and they're not too sensitive, so you don't have to worry about moving them. And like I said, right now is the perfect time because it's cool. It's going to rain here a little bit later. It's actually sprinkling a little bit now, and the temperature is cool. So it's the perfect time to divide up these perennials. Okay, and if anybody is not familiar with this process, all I'm going to do is use my spade and move all the way around the plant in a circle here. And I can smell onion, which is why the deer don't like this plant, which makes it even more of my favorite. And I think at this point, I just need another tap here. And I should be able to get that out. There we go. So now I've got this plant. All I'm going to do is take my spade and literally chop it in half. And then I'm going to move this part to the other part of the garden. And then just put this back. And like I said, it's going to rain later, so I will take a hose and water these in, even though it is going to rain, just because since they got dug up, I want to make sure that they're off to a good start. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing and divide up the other two clumps. All right, so now I'm just going to take these 3 new clumps of plants and figure out where I want to put them. I just want them, I want to give the Coronation Gold enough space. These are annuals, so I have to imagine in my mind's eye these aren't necessarily going to be there. So I'll go ahead and arrange them like this. So go ahead and just dig those in. And there we go. I think that's perfect. Have some Millennium Alliums for next season. I'm already excited to see those. Definitely, I pointed this out last video, these Gomphrena that I grew from seed. This is a plant I'm going to continue to grow in the garden. It is an absolutely fantastic plant, and I just love the color. I think it's the cutest plant, and it'll be great for some dried flowers in the wintertime. So I'm going to go ahead and just continue to look at my old photographs of this pollinator garden from the spring, early spring, and think about how I can fill in the gaps. I also need to move the biennials around, as I mentioned, so I want to make sure that I'm trying to encourage blooming through the whole season, but I love the way these Millennium Alliums look. And what I'll do is next season, I will plant the Kiss Me Over the Garden Gate further towards the back of the border. All right, so the last thing I want to do is I want to move some plants that I really don't like very much in the back garden. So come on, let's go. All right, so I planted, this primarily blooms in the springtime, and I planted these native turtle head, and they look awful. So I don't want to throw them away. That's a kind of a waste of money. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move them to the far end of this border. And now this area I have purposely not really watered because I wanted to see how the native plants held up. And for the most part, everything is doing pretty well. But you can tell it has been super, super dry here. All right, okay, I'm just gonna break those off there. But this native turtle head, I am not a fan. This way they're kind of in the back, and I'll focus on putting prettier things up here in the front. Well, that was perfect timing. It's just starting to sprinkle here, so that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.